of year data yet. We're going to go over this campus's end of year data today. We're going to record the meeting. Are we already recording? Yep. So for those on Zoom, keep your cameras on or off as you wish. If you're on Zoom, please drop your questions in the chat and we'll pause at points to answer them. And if we don't have the answer right now, we'll follow up in writing for any questions that we can't answer immediately. For those who are attending live, I'll pause after every couple of slides and let you guys ask questions. Just as an FYI, I know a lot of times there's one of the big questions is like, well, what are you doing about this? So we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing, what we've done, and what we're going to do at the end of the presentation. So if your questions are related to like, what does this data mean? How do I interpret this draft? Go ahead and call them out. But if there's like what you're programming around this, I'll have a slide at the end. But if you have more questions after that, feel free to ask. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So if you have a student specific question, like you'd like help interpreting the test scores, or you're not sure about, you're confused about this one says this one says something else. You can always contact your teacher and ask them about your student's progress, or you're welcome to email me, julias@ewstokes.org. Just keeping in mind that this is a very busy moment in the school year, so it may take me a little bit of time, a couple weeks to respond at the moment, because we're just finishing up all of our enrollment documentation and getting our beginning of year testing all wrapped up. So all of that is kind of in the process, but I will definitely respond to you as soon as I can. And DC CAPE results. So if you had a child in third, fourth, or fifth grade here at Stokes, they are now fourth or fifth grade. The DC CAPE results were sent home a couple of days ago in backpacks and envelopes. So make sure that you look in the backpacks for those. The beginning of year assessment results, are just about wrapped up with all of our testing. We're just finishing up some makeups. And so by the end of October, you'll be sent home those beginning of year test results. Just a note on DC CAPE results, they came with a little QR code on them. It requires a digital access code. We got the file from the state, and we will be texting you all that access code in the next couple of days. So basically the digital platform that you use that access code for is just to download an electronic copy of the test results. There's not a whole lot else other than what's on the report, but case it. Everett, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. Everett Richardson, I'm the Director of Special Services for both of our campuses.
Thanks for coming. So this is our agenda for today. We're going to review how Stokes is supporting student growth. We're going to share the 23-24 end of year data. That includes iReady, which is our math interim assessment, DIBBLS, our reading interim assessment, NWEA, which last year we did for K-2 in both reading and math, DC CAPE, which is the standardized assessment that all DC public school students take. We're going to share how families can support growth, and we're going to take your questions about it too. Sort of the big kind of takeaway that I want you to hear from me today is that on DC CAPE, we are significantly outperforming other DC schools. And I wanted to share a few things that we did last year that we think had an impact on those scores. Our grade level team and leadership meetings really focused hard on student data. So our teachers and instructional coaches, our principals, all of our instructional leadership team really planned with teachers looking at all of the student data that they collect, both from these standardized assessments, but also tests in the classroom to target instruction to the skills that students really, really need. Which meant that they had many of the classrooms had most of their instruction was done in small group instruction, really targeted to those skills. We also increased collaboration between learning specialists, which is our special education teachers and teachers who support EL students, and lead classroom teachers. We provided our learning specialists with research-based professional development on how to support students with reading difficulties. And so all of our learning specialists, our special ed teachers, received that. We also had a widespread intervention program run by Ms. Sue, and that included the use of Boost Reading and Dreambox Math, which are online platforms. You all have access to those as well at home if you'd like to use them on your off times. We also departmentalized our instructional coaching. So our instructional coaches, instead of working on all content areas with teachers, really focused in on either English language arts or math or target language instruction so that they could provide targeted support to those teachers in those areas across the grade levels. And we also increased teacher planning time through some schedule shifts. And so those are some things that we think that that we did here, choices that we made at Stokes Brookland to increase our student assessment results and continue to improve. The first data that I want to show you is our iReady math assessment. It's a math assessment that's administered 3 times a year for grades K to 5. It's adaptive, which means that students' questions get harder or easier depending on how they answer. So it's not the same set of questions for all students. If children start getting questions wrong, they'll get easier questions. If they start getting questions right, they'll start getting harder questions. And so the test adjusts to the level so that it can really determine more specifically about where students are performing relative to grade level benchmarks. So on your assessment results that you'll get home, these are the kind of color coding that the iReady gives you. So red with lines through it means that there are 3 or more grade levels below. Just red means it's 2 or more grade levels below. Yellow means it's 1 grade level below. Light green is early on grade level. And dark green, well, green with the lines through it is mid or above grade level. One thing to note about iReady is that the benchmark doesn't change throughout the year. So the beginning of year assessment that your 4th grader took is getting tested on standards that are at the end of year for 4th grade. So it's really likely that many of our students are in the yellow, 1 grade level below at the beginning of the school year, because they're grading them on end of year benchmarks, and that stays the same through the year. So that meant, is it clear? Okay. We'll send out this presentation at the end, and I've included a lot of links to sort of additional information about the assessment for families in these. And so just feel free to click on any of these links. You can read a little bit more about the assessment. There's often practice tests in there. If you want to take a peek at what the actual questions kind of look like, and read anything more about them. This is just a slide to kind of show you a little bit about what, and it's a little hard to read, I apologize for that, but this is like, if you take a look over here, it's kind of what your student assessment results will look like. So each of the times that they take iReady, they'll have a blue bar for that school year. The green bar is like the grade level content. So once your child's blue bar reaches that green section up here, that means they're in that grade level in that area. And then there's subdomains.
Let's get you some water.
I know it's really impossible to read, but there's little subcategories here that'll show you like numbers and operations, geometry, if they're on grade level in those specific areas, and it can give you some tips on where your child might need a little bit of additional support. This is our Brookland data from the last 2 school years. Just to orient you a little bit, this is the end of year assessment results from 22-23. This is the end of year assessment results from 23-24. So remember, dark green means mid or above grade level, light green means on grade level. The yellow is 1 grade level below and the red is below grade levels, right? This section is typical growth. So iReady publishes like a benchmark of how much they expect or that students should be growing throughout the year. If we reach 100%, that means that we've met typical growth. So they're growing at least as fast as iReady expects them to. In 22-23, we had 94% of typical growth. In 23-24, we had 103% of typical growth. So we're, both years not too far off from the growth target, but meeting it a little bit further along last year. At the end of year last year, 62% of students were at or above grade level compared to 61%. Any questions on iReady or this data?
Can you talk about when is it beginning of the year and end of the year that they're tested on? I forget
So it's 3 times per year. Yep. So we do it like usually in the end of September, early October for the first time, and then end of January, second time, and then the end of the school year.
Okay, for both iReady and Dibbles?
Both iReady and Dibbles. Yeah. Any other questions on iReady data here?
And the DC CAPE test is once a year?
Once a year.
Okay.
At the end of the year.
At the end of the year. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. The next data that I'd like to share with you is our Dibbles assessment. This one is also administered 3 times a year, just like iReady, K to 5. It assesses important reading skills like phonemic awareness, phonics, accurate and fluent reading, reading comprehension. This data is used by teachers to target these skills with students and to provide guidance for families. We also use it to set realistic and personalized goals for student growth. That is a hot link there, the parent guide to Dibbles, but I'll show you what it looks like because I think it's really helpful. It has all of the domains that Dibbles assesses, what they mean and why they're important, and what grade levels they're assessed on. So not all of the domains are assessed in every grade level. It varies depending on the grade level. So I think it's really worth looking at more deeply this particular slide. This is what your student assessment result might look like. Again, different subtests for different grade levels, so it might look a little bit different than that. I just want to point your eyes to a couple of things when you get these at home. So this is the general composite scores up here, and it's color coded just like this, above benchmark.
What?
Yeah, what? Can somebody please mute?
Hold on, I can't hear you. Hold on, I'm coming.
Can you please mute?
You want me to?
You can.
Are you the host?
Yeah. Yeah, 1 second, because now I know who it is. Yeah. Can you give me 1 second?
Yeah.
Something happened with the presentation. Sorry.
No, no problem.
I apologize. Where are the books?
So you'll see up here the score, the composite score is circled by a color, which aligns to above benchmark, at benchmark, below benchmark, or well below benchmark. And that is sort of a general assessment of their reading skill based on grade level content. And this one does change through the year. So the benchmark, unlike iReady, Dibble's benchmark changes throughout the year. So they have to get higher and higher scores each time they take Dibble's in order to stay on benchmark or stay where they were. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then here you'll see where the student scored in the different subdomains. There's a little line in the score at each of these little subcategories, and that's the score where the child scored compared to the general benchmark. Make sense? This is some historical Dibble's data. Kind of big takeaways. So let me orient you a little bit to this slide. So up here, you'll see the school year. And it's really hard to read, sorry. The first one for each school year is BOY, which stands for beginning of year. And the second one is end of year, EOY, which stands for end of year. So this is 21-22, beginning and end, 22-23, beginning and end, 23-24, beginning and end. And this is our newest data, the beginning of year this year. So we just wrapped up testing for that assessment. And so you can kind of see here that 22-23 to 23-24, we grew from 68% as a composite score to 71% at or above grade level at the end of last year. Any questions on this data?
If you are virtually, you can also ask questions. Just unmute and.
I think I had a question. So is Dibbles and iReady, like not all of schools have adopted this, right? So like we can't, I guess I'm wondering like how our school compares to, I don't know, DC and national.
Yeah, so we definitely don't have that information specifically because other schools don't necessarily publish their scores. We can get like national benchmarks on these, and so on your, I can pull it up in a little bit, on your assessment results for iReady, they'll give you a national percentile, I think. I'd have to look at it again to make sure that it comes out on the parent. So you can get performance of your child relative to national benchmarks, but it's not necessarily school-wide related to national comparisons.
Yeah, so my question I think is because like I can't speak to this like specifically, but generally I've heard that like bilingual students maybe their scores kind of hang in a certain area and then they outperform their like monolingual peers. But is that so like do we know generally like this is normal if we're not I mean, I'm not saying these numbers aren't great, but like, this is typical growth and stuff for a bilingual.
Yeah, so what most of the research says is that in elementary school, and I actually, this data has not borne out in DC, so I'm just gonna say that. But national research says that students who are in immersion programs in elementary schools, their test scores lag until middle school.
Okay.
And then
So
they
that's still sort
they
of-
go up. That's the national research. I when we look at data across DC, that is not the case here. So most of our bilingual schools are outperforming our monolingual schools. Often, except in Upper Northwest, where the monolingual schools are outperforming everyone's. So,
But like, that's a good takeaway. So like, I guess sometimes I'm looking at them and I'm like, is this good compared to other schools and immersion programs, or is it good just generally? Because like you said, they lag a little bit behind. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
there's so many different factors that impact scores. It's really hard to like pin it on one thing or another. Like, there's just so many pieces, but I would say that generally in DC, Upper Northwest schools perform best, and then multilingual charters perform second best.
But the other schools or public schools that are taking different assessments, right? Or we don't know that they take this.
We don't know that they take
These assessments,
or
right?
DIBELS particularly. I mean,
Right.
a lot of them I think do, especially the dyslexia law requires that there's a dyslexia screener, which still is, but there's other options that other schools use that they don't, we don't have a place for sharing data with other schools. But in terms of DCK results, that's true.
Can you talk a little bit more about how it's a,
Dyslexia screener.
yes, thank you.
Yep. So what we do is in the early grades, we give there's DIBELS generally, which has those particular these particular subtests on it. And then there are 3 additional subtests. Vocabulary is actually 1. And then there's spelling and third, which I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but I'll look at it. Which we add on to our early grade. What's that? Decoding? No, decoding is a typical subtest, but I'll have to look at spelling, vocabulary, and something. Which we add on. It's very short, but it's like a screener that we give to all of our early grade students. And it flags you for the potential for reading difficulties. It's not a special education assessment, but it just flags like, oh, there might be an issue here. And so for those students, then we provide additional intervention, and then we monitor their progress to see if they might need additional support. But we also use it just generally to like, if a student is scoring well below or below, to make sure that we're monitoring their data, providing them additional services that they need, and then if that doesn't, seem to help and make sure that they're getting evaluated for special education and see if they have any diagnosed reading differences. Sense? Right. This one might give you a little more information in terms of relative performance. So we take NWA map. Last year we just did it in K-2. This year we're doing it in K-5 again. We dropped it last year because we felt our students had too many assessments, but we really missed the data that we got from it. And so we're doing it again K-5, but we're only doing 3rd, 4th, and 5th in the beginning of the year. We'll give it a second time to K-2 at the end of the year. It is a nationally normed assessment, meaning we can compare our students' progress relative to national norms. And, I linked a couple of family tools here, and typically we deliver the reports through parents. We should be starting this assessment next week, I believe. So we'll send you those results as soon as we have them. We typically send it through parents for secure documents.
So is it just that it's a national norm that you brought that that assessment is part of the curriculum now, just to get that sort of national perspective? Because if Dibbles and iReady are already sort of calculating, or, you know, getting that, is it just an additional sort of benchmark?
It's an additional benchmark with the national subset. That's one of our big reasons why we did it. The other piece of it is that Dibbles, although they do have a reading comprehension section on the reading exam, we don't feel like it assesses reading comprehension at the level that we want to know how students are doing. And so Dibble's reading comprehension exam is basically you read a little passage and you put in what you think is the missing word there. And so it gives you a sense of whether they understand the sentence structure and words and within context, but there's a lot more to reading comprehension that we wanted more information on in terms of standardized assessment results.
And WEA does that.
Before I talk about NWA's data, I want to talk a little bit about percentiles and quintiles. So, how many of you have heard the word percentile? Can you give me an example of where you might have heard the word percentile?
Nutrition's often.
Exactly. So a percentile is a value on a scale of 100 that indicates the percent of a distribution that is equal to or below. So if your child at the pediatrician's office is at the 70th percentile for height for their age, that means they're taller than 70% of students of their age. NWA also provides data in percentile format. So you're not going to see this child is on 3rd or 4th grade level. What you're going to see is a percentile relative to the national norm. So a typical child on NWA, so if your child is scoring exactly average across the nation from when they did their norming study, they will score at the 50th percentile. So that's sort of our like, oh, are they where they should be is 50th percentile, right? NWA also publishes information with the quintiles of percentiles. Quintiles, so like it divides your student score into low average, average, high, and it color codes them like that, if you see those color coding over there. So it's 5 equal groups of percentiles, which the population can be divided to according to the distribution of values. So you would typically see in a typical classroom, 20% of students in each of those quintiles. So you would see, if you had a normal distribution, we'd see 20% in each one.
Do you know what, like iReady, Dibbles for reading, if it's distributed like that?
Do they have a norming?
Like 5 different areas, like just how you described?
No, the way that they do it is more with the benchmark. Like we don't get a percentile. Quintiles are really more for percentiles. We can get I don't think they publish them in the family reports for Dibbles, but we have a percentile for Dibbles performance for each student, but it's the composite, it's not in a quintile.
I'll tell you why I'm curious, because I'm always wondering, like, when I see these, like, where does my child stand with the rest of the class? Not necessarily,
Emotionally.
yeah, like, because they've all been through they went through the pandemic and kindergarten, so they missed a lot of like foundational instruction for reading. So anecdotally, it seems like a lot of kids who did that struggle with reading, but like I'm always curious, like, are they all struggling, or is it just, and I can't really get an answer from the teachers. It's almost like they just really want, and I get it, they want me to there's so many factors that I mean, but like I'm always just curious, like where
they're performing relative to the class. I can definitely I'd be happy to share grade level performance distributions, if that's helpful.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, on Dibble specifically.
Thank you.
And it's just the composite score.
I'm not sure if that's
Okay. I can figure that out for you, but I'm happy to share that.
Would it be that similar to the graph we used to do for APT?
APT.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes sense. This is a snip of a NWA student progress report. I just kind of wanted to share it with you so that when you get them at home, they're a little bit interpretable. They come with a thing on the backside that explains this too, but it can be a little bit hard to understand. So you'll see math and reading. Under here is the goal areas. You can't read them at all, but it's like operations and algebraic thinking. And then you'll get your quintile score. So this child was high, high, high average, and high. So they were in the top quintile for 3 categories and the 4th quintile for 1 category. So you can kind of see relative strengths and weaknesses there. This might help you as well, actually. This probably will. When we publish our scores, the blue bar is the child. The orange bar is the Stokes grade level. And that includes both East End and Brookland. So if this is a 4th grade score, all 4th graders at Stokes, this is their average score here, that orange bar. And the yellow bar is the national grade level mean. Does that make sense? So that might give you a sense in terms of on NWA, how they're performing relative to both their local peers, so Stokes, and nationally. And then here you'll see the historical data for your child. The most recent one comes on top with the grade level. There's a RIT score. You can pretty much just ignore that score. It's not very helpful. What you want to look at is the percentile here. So this is a percentile range. The one in the middle is where they've tagged your child, but they could be anywhere between these 2 numbers, low and high. And so again, that percentile score is if this child looks like they scored at the 87th percentile in math, meaning that they're scoring better than 80% of their peers at their grade level at that time on the system.
Did you say that you did not do this test at all last year?
We just did it in a second.
So it's an optional test for
Yeah.
schools.
So we should, if we had a kid last year in K2 we should have received this.
I don't think they ended up sending them home at the end of the year, but
So I was just looking for.
it'll show the last 2 assessment results this fall when you get, okay.
And would they have been tested at the beginning?
They will be tested next week and the week after.
But
Last year, yes. They should have sent them home last year at the beginning of the year.
yeah, it just doesn't look familiar.
Okay. I think,
Strange that there was.
yeah, I recall sending them, but
I believe that.
But if the time comes and you don't receive it, please let.
Are they always also posted on Parent Square or is it only an envelope?
so that's the thing. So some of these, this one I usually send home through Parent Square if they come with student ID numbers that are readable by a scanning thing. I send them home through Parent Square as well, because then I can just upload a PDF and it splits them automatically and sends them home. I don't have to send 700 emails. If they don't come with a student ID number on the parent report, I just send them home in paper. That includes students.
So you said that K through 12 that took it last year did not go out at the end of the year.
It did not go out at the end of the year. We'll send it home when they take their beginning of year assessment and close that test window.
So like this year, what time should they expect?
The end of October.
And this is grade specific.
Yeah. Grade specific. Yeah, but again, you're not gonna get, like if you have a 4th grader, you're not gonna get are they at 4th grade level or not? What you'll get is that percentile. And iReady and Dibbles will give you, are they meeting grade level benchmarks or not? This gives you a percentile relative to national data. Make sense? If any of you, most of you probably know how to access this by now because we also send our progress reports home there. But this link here will give you step-by-step on how to access your secure documents in Parent Square. So that's where we send home these test results that have the student IDs and the progress reports. This is our K-2 Brookland English Language Arts reading data. Achievement data for the end of year last year. So this is again divided into those quintiles. This is the mean percentile for our K to 2 students. So our K to 2 students scored at the 63rd percentile relative to national benchmarking. And this is by grade level. So kindergarten students last year scored at the 60th, first grade at the 72nd in reading, and second grade at the 36th in reading. One thing to note about second grade is that in kindergarten and first grade, they take an exam that reads aloud to them through headphones. Second grade is the first time that they're taking an exam that requires them to read the questions independently and answer them that way. So we often see it drop. You know, I do think though that that's not the only reason for that. Right?
But you say you see a drop, but since these are like compared to national
National
data,
forms.
you wouldn't
So-
think that the national data is
So-
dropping too.
So the other piece of this is that you can give the exam, the K to 2 exam. You can give the early grades exam to second graders as well. So schools get to choose if they give their second graders the one that reads aloud to them or the one that they have to read independently. We use the guidance from NWEA to choose that. And so most of our students take the exam that they have to read it to themselves. We do, however, offer it for struggling readers. We do offer the earlier grade exam to them as well. But I'm not sure if the national, I don't know what the proportion of kids who take it one way or the other nationally is. Make sense? This is our same graphs, but for math. So overall, K to 2 students scored at the 60th percentile. Kindergarten scored at the 66th, first grade at the 60th, and second grade at the 60th. Oh, any questions on NWA? Before we move on? So the next assessment that I'm going to discuss is DCK, which was formerly known as PART. It is the assessment that is mandated for DC public school students. In our case, it's our 3rd through 5th graders. They 3rd through 5th grade take reading and math. 5th grade also takes science. It tests students' attainment of grade level standards. It is not adaptive, meaning all of the assessment questions are targeted towards the grade level that your child is taking it at. It is a timed test for general education students, which is different than any of the other, well, DIBELS is timed as well, but most of the other assessments that we give our students, unless they have a disability or English language learner, they have to take the test within a certain period of time. So that is a challenge for many of our students. This test. I linked OSSI's, the Office of State Superintendent's DCK link there, which has a lot of information about the assessment if you want to dive further into it. These are the performance levels for DCK. 1, 2, and 3 are below grade level expectations according to the Common Core, and 4 and 5 are meeting or exceeding grade level expectations. It's also really important though to take a look at level students who are scoring at a level 3, because that is how I like to describe it is that those are students who have sort of mastered the grade level skills, but aren't yet able to apply it to novel situations, to analyze, to really compare and contrast, or solve multi-step complicated problems and do those higher order thinking skills. This assessment is not like the assessments we took as a child. I would highly recommend that you go and take some of the practice tests so you have a sense of what this actually looks like. The questions are complicated and difficult. Each of the end of the English language arts exams, the students have to write it the same. But so it's important to look at both reasons. Yep.
So it seems like for the DCK, we might be able to help our student prep a little bit, but it doesn't seem like there's like iReady and DIBELS like prep. It's just right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And for the DCK, the writing piece of it, is it handwritten or that's
It's typed.
Yeah.
And it's in a tiny little box,
Yeah.
this big, even though they're supposed to write books. So it's confusing. Good question. Just show me your opinion. DCK versus PART. Are they comparable? Yeah, it's exactly the same.
This is just different.
They just renamed
Different
it.
name.
Well, literally just the name. So basically, the park consortium dissolved and then DC basically bought park from Pearson. And now there's DCK. So I was worried about that too. I was like, is this actually gonna be the same? Totally the same.
So the data, when you look at it like across the years, is the same.
It's
the
that
same.
same. Looks the same.
And whenever you compare it to national.
There's no national comparisons for this one. We can just compare to the city.
And that's DC mandated, but it's like, you mentioned Common Core, so it's like based on like other sort of national standards.
Exactly. I'm gonna click on this little hyperlink there.
The parent guide?
So DC Cape, like I said, they should have come home in backpacks if you have a current fourth or fifth grader that was in Stokes last year. But I just wanted to share a little bit. There's a family guide, which you can find in multiple languages online. But it explains a little bit about how to interpret the score results. So what you'll see is how the child performed on those performance levels. That's that little QR code that I'm talking about. You can scan and put in the access code and get more information. And then it'll show you the subdomains and how they performed in the subcategories. So if they're different, broken down by like major content, supporting content, modeling and application in math, and then there's like literature, informational text, writing, and English language arts. So there's multiple subclaims. So you can see how the child did in each of those subclaims. And also down here is a section that shows how the child did relative to grade level peers at their LEA. So at Stokes, then that would include both Brookland and East End, and also DC in general. And so this is going to give you a percentile here relative to those groups. Oh no. Our longitudinal data for the Brookland campus. Up at the top is 3+, so this includes kids who scored approaching grade level expectations or above. The bottom is 4+, so only those kids who were at grade level or above in DC Cape. The darker lines are Stokes Brookland. The lighter line of the same color is DC in general. So the bold line here is 3+ in English language arts compared to DC's lighter bold line. And you can see the data here. And then similarly, this dark green line is Stokes English language arts 4+, and that lighter green line is DC 4+. Dark blue line is Stokes math 3+, light blue line is math 2+ for DC. Dark orange is math 4+. Stokes, and that's DC. Makes sense. So just kind of big takeaway here. The number of students who scored 4+ increased 8.7% in English language arts last year from the year before. So you can kind of see our trajectory from 2017 to now. We have increased 18 percentage points in English language arts in 4+. And from 2017 to now in math, we have increased 8 percentage points in 4+. Between the previous year, 2023 and 2024, we decreased 1.9 percentage points. This is our performance levels. LEA means both campuses, Brookland and East End. These are, remember that the 4s and 5s are above grade level, at grade level, approaching below and below. This purple dash here is where DC scores at 4+. So if the purple line is below our green bar, that means we did better than DC. If the purple line is above our green bar, that means we did worse than DC. And that makes sense? Any questions on this display? We're gonna look at it again, the different, so I just want to make sure you understand it. This is yellow. That's that same look in math. And this is by grade level. This is all of our students at Brookland, third, fourth, and fifth in English language arts. And any questions here?
We do go back a second to the previous one.
Yep.
So the purple line is the DC.
DC, yeah, so all students, so in this case, it's all students. At 4+, so
So does this mean like that only 20 or so % of DC students are performing at grade level?
correct. So then you can see the published DC benchmarks for each of the grade levels, like how the students did at each of these grade levels.
Oh, DC houses in.
What's that?
Is in the four, like all of the purple lines
Yeah.
are all showing up in the green. It's
Yeah.
all.
And then these are our subgroup performances for English language arts in that same display. I only, if there was a subgroup with less than 10 students in it, I didn't include it here for data privacy reasons and because it's not generalizable. And DC also doesn't publish subgroup data for 2 words. And the little number next to the category is the number of students in that subgroup who were tested in this. So in general, in English language arts, we are performing higher than DC, except for white students. Takeaway there. And that's the same graph, but for math. We're scoring higher than DC in general, except for our white students and our African students. Any questions on our subgroup data?
One second, there's something on the chat. I know, yeah. What is LEA? Caroline respond.
So this isn't a confusing graph, but I think it's really fun. This is our performance level change from between 2 years. So if a student had 2 DC CAPE and PARC scores with us in consecutive years, so if they took one with us in 3rd grade and then also in 4th grade, or if they took one in 4th grade and also in 5th grade, this is the number of levels they went up or down in their performance level. So if a student in 3rd grade scored at a 3, in 4th grade they scored at a 4, that would be a +1. If instead in 3rd grade they scored at a 5, and in 4th grade they scored at a 3, that would be a -2. Right? This is for the last 2 years of this kind of growth data. DC will publish growth data on DC CAPE. That's more specific and statistically accurate, but they haven't published it yet. This is like a version of growth data, if you will. So if they stayed at the same performance level, they're in this green bar. If they dropped one, they're in the yellow bar. If they increased one, they're light blue, and if they increase two, they're dark blue. And if they increase three, they're purple. And so this was the year, so 2 years ago, this was our data, and this was from 2 years ago to last year. This is the number of performance level changes for math and English language arts.
What's the sort of wind up on looking at this? I'm not a data person.
Absolutely. So I would say that in terms of math, we kind of stayed relatively steady. Few of our kids increased their performance level last year on DCK than math, right? But most of our students are kind of staying at the same performance level from third to fourth. There's some that are increasing and a couple, and some that are decreasing. In English language arts, on the other hand, like you are seeing about 50% of students increasing performance levels between third and fourth or fourth and fifth, which is huge, I think. I think the big takeaway here is that we're growing kids pretty quickly in English language arts last year. Focus a little bit more on growing kids in that. Would be our big high level.
It's actually one of them.
So what's next? We are starting interventions earlier. We've already started them. We started a learning lab intervention time here in the library on Mondays and Tuesdays, where kids are getting really targeted online instruction and specific things targeted to their needs. And we're also doing, for students who need additional support, we're identifying through data in our upper grades currently. We are giving high impact tutoring and online groups through varsity tutors this year. So students are pulled out in small groups. They have an online tutor that they get services from.
We also have, like last year, we were sharing with Easton, and now that person is here, and that we're focused on.
So we have we're continuing to give professional development for teachers and leaders, and we're really focusing on that math instruction. We hired additional leadership positions to support teachers. So Mr. Richardson, who had to go, unfortunately, is our director of special services, but we also hired a special services coordinator to make sure that our students with special needs, like EL and special education needs, are being more supported. So,
And also, you should know that Holly Pepper, she was a learning specialist for came with us. She came with us for many years. Oh my. Holly?
She's on the.
She's on maternity leave, but
Just coming back soon.
we also want to continue to build on our school culture progress. Like we think that being in community and being happy and at school is one of the most important prerequisites to learning. And so we have a big push this year. Our theme is leading with love. So we've seen that around places. We're also in the process of adopting a new English language arts curriculum. So the state superintendent put out a list of curriculums in order to comply with the dyslexia legislation. And we have been in the process of testing those. And we're really close to settling on one, and we're just beginning the process of implementing it at the end of this year.
Has the math curriculum changed at all?
No, we don't plan to change, but it's a good. I think one of the things that, sorry.
Yeah.
One of the things that we know is happening that our schedule is a little tight, and we needed to open the learning lab because we were taking some time from instruction to really follow the curriculum fidelity. So now that we have that outside of the classroom, we hope to see better instruction. Now the time teachers have more time to do everything that was supposed to be done in that time that we have for them. So we won't be hoping.
The learning labs are something on that. And that's the one thing that I don't get a whole lot of information for my child, not from school, but like the learning lab, you mentioned it's like when they come in here, are they getting like, do they just get to pick, or is it just like it's actually sort of targeted to sort of what they need? Or
This is a lot deeper than that. So
Okay.
the instructional leadership team looks at the data, which we already had at the beginning,
right?
and all this data. And from there, we look at the groups where students are, And we plan for that. And so part of the work that will be done with those students and those groups will be here in the room. And so it can be the platform, it can be small group instruction, it can be different. For the students, they're coming to do different, they don't know that this is part of it.
Right.
To what they're learning. And it's at different levels.
And that's for the entire, every student.
Second to fifth.
Immersion school. I mean, when you do immersion, a certain number of hours goes to the target language. Where are these hours taken away from when you compare to non-immersion school? Because it means at some point you have either less English, less math, less something, But there's just
So
a limited
that-
number of
Yeah,
hours.
absolutely. So we teach half of the time that normal schools teach in literacy in English, right? And so they're getting those literacy skills, but they're getting them in the target language, which is obviously going to look different, right? And some of those skills apply, they can transfer the skills between languages, but some of them are pretty specific to the particular
So they
language.
wouldn't get less math.
No, we teach a math lesson. And so in the upper grades, all of those math lessons currently in this model are being taught in English. In K and 1, they're taught in both languages.
There is a question on the chat. Has consideration been given to using aftercare to offer tutoring opportunities?
Yeah, so we actually do that. Ms. Luke holds book clubs and math groups in after school. She did last year. I think this year she wanted to focus on that less because fewer kids were able to attend them, and she had sort of inconsistent attendance, which is why she wanted to start the learning lab during school day. But we definitely have used after school a lot for small group tutoring and interventions.
But is that, like, how is that, what's her name? How do people find out about that? Because I feel like
so
that
it's
wasn't
not-
like part of like, you hear about after school,
It's
was
not
it
as-
just like targeted or
Targeted,
just?
exactly. So we-
Targeted? Got it.
So we have like a whole point system where we assign students points based on how they're doing on their assessments, these assessments, and also teacher recommendations and things like that. And if you qualify, if you're, top 50 kids, then you get an invite.
This year, though, we have varsity students. And so the group of students that we have identified will be invited to that, but all the students now with the learning lab will get some.
Parents generally receive a letter informing them like your child has been invited to participate in this. They give you the schedule and everything.
So if my child is receiving some instruction in aftercare, I would know about it.
Yeah.
You will be asked to come to pick him up at certain hour and not pick him up on time and things like that.
But that was last year, you're not doing it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if
They've
she's
seen with varsity tutors.
But they are happening during the day.
it's
During the
school
day and probably dependent on the students.
You're just starting with them this coming week. In fact, we asked for some parents and volunteers to help us supervise the groups.
Maybe a little bit off topic, but what would that involve, the escorting and the supervising?
Yeah.
So I'm not actually tutoring, I'm just watching.
Yes,
There will
students.
be someone in the platform working with the students.
Okay.
You will be here helping, like with whatever they need, like the notebook, so something.
Or even to
Yeah.
connect.
But you will not be providing instruction, just the book.
And during the day. Yeah.
It's from 8 to 9 a.m. Wednesdays and Thursdays. We start this coming week until November 14th.
The email didn't specify that. Maybe, letting parents know exactly what times they would have to commit, that would be helpful.
The groups will be mixed. Yeah.
Information, we're working on that, we're planning for that, yesterday we got a big meeting, we talked about that, but we will get one.
But you click on the view who has signed up, does it list all the times?
Yeah. Look at the time and all the days. I don't know why the form is saying, yeah. I don't know why the form isn't allowing to sign for more than once. I even changed it, didn't fix, but yeah, just email us or me or Mrs. Lou, and we will add you manually if you have more days that you can support.
About the new ELA curriculum, I know you're still getting used to it, and
adapting what's coming in, but what, are there big changes, like, what are some of the shifts that?
They're just, yeah, it's a good question.
Going to be very honest, we worked well in the curriculum that we use. We always felt that there was a big growth. And it's proven that our sports show. But because of what happened with the science of reading here in DC, we are mandated to change. So we still would hope that we can use what some of the things that we learned in the other curriculum, but we are definitely in different. And so that will, we're trying to find one that will work well with, incorporating units of inquiry and having that transdisciplinary option for students. But we looked at 5 different curriculums, and it was a group of about 10 people, and we now identified one.
So it has to fit with the
Yeah, for us, it's important, but also
Yeah.
DC, they said, this is the list of curriculums that you should consider. And so we looked at those options, and now we have to.
And of course, everything, we can never implement a English language arts curriculum off the shelf because we have half of the time to do it in. And so, making sure that we choose one that's adaptable, and things like that is important to us as well. So.
And when you say like science, like all the science of reading research, so it's sort of less that shorthand like Lucy Calkins style and more Jackson.
Listen,
That's what DC is mandating. Got it.
Particularly the early grades, that's true.
And we did incorporate some of that.
Yeah.
last year.
For sure.
Right.
And so we see the results, but it's mandated.
How to support at home. So some ways that you can support at home is making sure that you look in those backpacks for those assessment results and looking at them, right? If you have particular questions or concerns, bringing them to your teachers for parent-teacher conference so that they can give you some additional ways to support them at home. Also, you should have received before back to school night, your Clever login information for your children. If you log into Clever, your students all the time have access to Dreambox for math, Amplify Boost for reading. And there's also a new platform on there, Varsity Tutors, which we're using it for small intensive tutoring, but there's a lot of free resources on there that anyone can access at any time, including families. There's conversational French classes on there. There's all sorts of really cool stuff. So if you log in through Clever, click on that, you can kind of look through the options for varsity tutoring. There's like on-demand tutoring. I don't know that the on-demand tutoring would be super helpful for kids in elementary school, but you can take a look at what is on there, and there's lots of different courses and instruction on there that anyone can access at any time.
So I might have missed that. Is that our teachers or a different point of contact for Clever Access?
Clever Access, that would typically be Miss Roxana, but it's me right now, Miss Roxana's maternity leave. So.
Okay. And that gives you, Clever gives you access to Dreambox and Amplify.
Our Boost and varsity tutors.
I'll check my email.
Yeah, it should be in your secure docs. It should be in your secure docs, in Parents Fair, which is where you get your progress reports.
Okay, I'll take a look.
Clever is new this year, right? As like the portal to both of these or no?
So you can access them in other login formats. The easiest way is to do it this way. That's just we're directing everybody that way, so we're not managing multiple passwords.
It helps. I think it came through the day before back to school.
Yeah, I saw.
I remember they talked about it at back to school, prompted me to go back and look, make sure, because I missed it first. Now it's second. And
it's web-based.
Thank you. Search.
So our campus has pretty good attendance rates, but one of the things that we do notice is that we have a lot of folks who show up tardy with regularity. I'm sure it's nobody here. But those 30 or 45 minutes every day really do impact learning. It adds up to days and days of school time at the end of the year.
Also, can I add to that, Julia? A lot of times those groups, small groups, happen or start at that time. So if your child is not here, they listen to me. And after 3 times, 4 times, that's a lot of instruction.
Yeah, these coming groups are from 8 to 9, so I should be here by 8.
Make sure, if you think your child needs additional support, please use those recommendations that your teachers are giving you during parent-teacher conferences. They plan them to be specifically supportive. There's also really specific instructions on those DIBELS family reports that can really help. Easy, quick activities that you can do at home. Read daily with your children. I am a parent as well. Sometimes we over rely on screen time, but it's really important to be reading with your children every day and reducing that screen time. It helps them their attention and learning. There's some links for math words and ideas from Investigations Math that I want to kind of flag for you. These are really helpful when you get a math homework assignment home and your kid is like, that's not the way we do it. In class. You can look in here to learn how Investigations helps us teach these things. So if I have a fourth grader, and I want to learn how Investigations teaches multiplication facts, I can learn about the ways that we teach multiplication facts. So what is a square number, right? And so you can kind of take a look at these strategies so that you can kind of understand what it is that your child is facing in the classroom. You might be able to better support them at home. And then the other link here is the math games.
Investigations, that's like the notebook or the curriculum that, right?
This is really cool. Great. That's helpful. And these are some games to play with your children at home. Just to be honest, like playing them on this online platform isn't the most fun.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, I think, so most of the games that Investigations publishes are really meant to be played with like cards in person on the table. But so, I mean, I think you can take a look at what they do and then you might be inspired to get out your playing cards and do them in a different way.
That's what I was going to say. A lot of the games you can just see how they work in them.
So, but I think it's, you can use them and then, play them on here. Like it's all manipulatable.
What grade did you go? Sorry.
Fourth grade. I mean, it's not really like, whatever it is, but like, so you can play them on here, but you might just want to use them for inspiration. But take a look. I do like them. And then if you, geez. I'm just gonna do this.
Just so you know, investigation problem game, but there's a lot of skills that are taught. They see them as game.
I know we kind of went through a lot of questions kind of just as we were going, but I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have. And also, if you have your phone with you, just take a little picture of that there QR code and provide me some feedback from my data presentation. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Any questions?
Just technical. Parents where and where to access. Here.
Would you want to show you?
Great.
Yeah, so in this presentation, you'll see this link. So if you access Parent Square through web portal, you're gonna go to the side that says alerts and notices here on the sidebar. And there's a little thing that says document there, and that's where you'll access it. You'll have to sign in for this, because it's, these secure documents are stuff with particular, like passwords and things like that, right? From the app, if you go to the bottom toolbar and select alerts, then you can view a document.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I got it. I don't know that I've ever gone on like the desktop version. Where is there any like, I only ever access to that. Is there any like functionality or thing that I'm not able to like
That's
get?
pretty No, I mean, I think it used to be easier. Secure documents used to be a lot easier with the web than the app, but they changed it on the app. But I think it's a little easier to see now.
I use a lot of desktop version, and it's the ellipses on the end there, all of that shows up in the left. You can navigate on
Okay.
desktops, that's all I find.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Right, yeah.
That's all sitting on the left side. The rest of it.
I know sometimes when the teachers, when we get like the grade specific newsletters from the teachers, like all the color block, sometimes like
The
it's
format.
wonky in the app, but if you
Look online.
look online, you can actually read it. I just learned that this week.
What classroom is working?
We figured somebody, somebody.
It's like, they just have to make a template, but then it'll stay. The colors will stay. Yeah.
It's like the text one, like,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
lines up, so you can actually read it.
Yeah.
But it was easy. And actually in the app, if you click on like view and browser, like it doesn't actually take you out, but it like, it presents, it's just super.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was looking for the term like document alerts, I didn't think of alerts being.
I know.
That's.
Julia, you said they should have gotten like.
With the capers as well. It, for the last couple days, it was before Roxanne went out on leave, so it must have
That was
been.
last
Was it Friday?
Wednesday or Thursday.
My gosh, pretty good about like being like.
What grade is she in now?
Fourth grade.
Yeah, I figured it out, yeah.
I
That's for sure.
yeah, so
Pretty good about it.
I just asked my husband too, and we didn't see it. She's in fourth. Who's our point? Who do we follow up with? Our teacher or?
I will find out.
Oh, you're fourth too, so yeah.
It could
He's pretty
be,
good about
so it could be that Miss Roxanne handed them to the teacher, and they maybe didn't go home, yeah, that's possible, but we'll check.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll stop.
Question from the chat?
Any other questions that we have?
Just out of curiosity, are there any internal assessments for, the target language interpretation?
Yeah, we do a trimester, in-house, what we call our in-house target language assessment, which is a teacher delivered and assessed on a rubric, tool that we've developed as a school-wide assessment, and then it'd be late winter, early spring, we do STEM. Yes. What is that?
So the target languages.
It's a target language assessment. First through fifth grade take it. It assesses reading, writing, speaking, and listening in the target language.
And that's what gets captured in the progress reports or whatever, the
Exactly.
trimester reports, that's what that language.
Mhm.
assessment.
So much.
Thank you very much for
Have a lovely
coming.
day.
Thank you.
I'll find out now.
Oh, thank you. See you at the soccer game. I have to share with you.
I probably video myself.
Party. Oh, they'll take care of it.